I am vengeance. I am the night. I am Batman.
Remembering Kevin Conroy, a Creator and Conversation Special Edition. On the 10th of November 2022, the world lost a great talent, Mr. Kevin Conroy, who for many served as the definitive, not just voice, but portrayal of the character of Batman in any medium beyond that of the comic book. Mr. Conroy began his long association with the character in the 1990s, with Batman the Animated Series hitting our screens in 1992. His portrayal would go on to serve, as I stated, for many the definitive voice, often people saying that's the voice of the character they would hear in their mind while reading a comic or any other story featuring the Caped Crusader. But Mr. Conroy's career extended far beyond that of Batman, having already been an actor on Broadway, having also portrayed various other characters in film and television. And Mr. Conroy even had the opportunity to portray the character of Batman in other mediums as well. Beyond animation, he voiced the character in the Arkham series of video games, and even had an opportunity to portray him in live action, albeit an alternative version of the character for the Crisis on Infinite Earths miniseries with the CW shows. I was fortunate to invite Mr. Conroy to Dublin Comic Con, the second edition of the show in 2017. When I reached out to his representation, I did so without much consideration that it would actually happen. Often in these things you would send out in the hope that perhaps you'll hear back. But I was over the moon when his representation returned to me and responded in the positive. This is a huge opportunity for the show, and sincerely helped the show to expand as well as more people started to become aware of Dublin Comic Con, to fly over to meet Mr. Conroy in person, and fans were just absolutely delighted to welcome him. He did in fact have Irish roots, and he had also studied at UCD for a semester. I had already known this from a prior interaction with a colleague who had visited New York Comic Con and met Mr. Conroy in person. I had hoped to leverage his Irish roots to bring him to Dublin Comic Con and was delighted when it was successful. When he first visited, Dublin Comic Con took place at the National Show Centre, but when he returned to another edition of Dublin Comic Con, we had already extended to the Convention Centre where the show currently resides. Mr. Conroy's last visit to Ireland was during a Evening Wit, a special event hosted by Dublin Comic Con. I recall it well because his flight got delayed, so he had a bit of a trek to try and arrive to get here. When he finally did arrive, his luggage didn't make it. So having on my own printing press, I was able to get those photographs that he needed for the meet and greet printed and produced for him. He was always a pleasure to interact with. And what you saw on the stage was pretty much the same man off the stage. He was courteous, he was respectful. He was the very definition of a scholar and a gentleman. Just back in June of 2022, I was tasked with a very important project in which I had to deliver a presentation. There was a video component to this presentation, so I had reached out to Mr. Conroy to see if he would, I know it's a little cheeky of me, but if he would provide the narration for said video. His response, yet again, shocked me as it was in the affirmative and the positive. Yes, he would, and he was happy to help. Little would I realise that following November, he would no longer be with us, and we had already made tentative plans. He had hoped to return to Dublin Comic Con one more time, and he even offered to guest lecture at the college I was then working at. Without a shadow of a doubt, I'm certain that should Mr. Conroy still be with us here today, he would have been a guest lecturer delivering a masterclass here at TASQ Art. I was fortunate to meet some of his colleagues, including Andrea Romano, the legendary voice and casting director, who actually cast Mr. Conroy in his role. You can listen back to another interview I held with Ms. Romano on this very podcast, but later on in today's episode, I will play for you a snippet from a screening of Mask of the Phantasm, the first theatrical release of the Batman the Animated Series property, which wasn't intended at the time to be a theatrical release, but the quality of the production was to such a standard that it was elevated to a limited theatre release. I also had the opportunity to speak with Miss Susan Eisenberg, who portrayed Wonder Woman in Justice League and Justice League Unlimited alongside Mr. Conroy and the entire crew of the Justice League. I've extracted a segment from my interview with Miss Eisenberg so that you can hear just about the chemistry and what it was like working with Mr. Conroy and those who helped to put together the shows that helped to make them all household names and to embody such iconic characters. For a period of time, since I began this podcast, in fact, I'd wanted to cover, in some capacity, the career and legacy of Mr. Conroy. It was all about trying to figure out how to articulate it and do so in a respectful manner. I did have one on-the-record interview with Mr. Conroy. This, however, was a written interview for Dublin Comic Con magazine in 2017 when he first came to Dublin Comic Con. I have another segment, a video interaction with Mr. Conroy, which I hope to share at the end of this episode. So what I will do for today's episode is you will hear me read the interview I conducted with Mr. Conroy in 2017. I would then play the segment with Andrea Romano from the masterclass of March of 2024 with TASQ Art. It was actually after the masterclass when, unknown to us, this is pure coincidence, a screening of Mask of the Phantasm was taking place. And with Andrea being in town, she kindly went to Movies in Tala and introduced the film for the audience. And then I will move to the Dublin Comic Con panel extract with Ms. Susan Eisenberg from 2023. And that was recorded prior to Ms. Eisenberg and others from Justice League visiting at Dublin Comic Con back in March 2024. I will now read from the interview I conducted with Mr. Conroy for Dublin Comic Con magazine dated August 2017. Questions are by me, and I will note the response by Mr. Conroy as Kevin. What inspired you to become an actor? Kevin. When I was 12, I transferred from traditional rigid Catholic schools to the public school system. Adjustment to the free-spirited, undisciplined public school was very difficult. I reacted by closing down, crawling inside emotionally. The school thought I was learning disabled and put me into remedial classes. One English teacher, Mrs. Wilkes, assigned our reading of Shakespeare's Julius Caesar. On hearing my observations of the play, she asked if I would like to come to her advanced placement class later that day to join the conversation. I did, and based on that day, she suggested that I be moved into all advanced placement classes. Suddenly, I began to bloom. Seeing that I needed to be brought out of myself, she asked me to look at the next school play, Our Town. I had never seen or read a play. Reading it opened a whole world for me, where I felt immediately at home. I took the part of George Gibbs, the young lead. Once I got over my initial fear, I found a world on the stage where I felt completely safe to be myself. By assuming other identities, I could express myself in ways that I couldn't as myself. At 17, I auditioned for Juilliard, got a scholarship and moved to NYC. I never stopped acting. Question. When you first auditioned for the role of Batman, did you audition for the role of any of the other characters? Kevin. First auditioning for the Batman project, I actually wanted to read for Bullock, Commissioner Gordon, Joker, the character roles. The producers pointed out that if I was Batman, I'd be in every episode, and anyway, that was all they were interested in me for. Actors always want to stretch, so I was drawn to the character parts. Given that Batman the Animated Series evolved into so many other shows, Batman and Robin, Batman Beyond, Justice League, all the movies, and now the Arkham games, it's a good thing they were only interested in me for Batman. Question. With over 20 years portraying Batman, do you have any favourite moments or episodes? Kevin: my favourite episodes are the ones that touch on Bruce Wayne's childhood, the root of Batman's pain and drama. So, Mask of the Phantasm, Perchance to Dream, Dreamscape are all favourites. Question: were you a fan of Batman growing up, and have your thoughts and opinions of the character changed over the course of your time portraying him? Kevin: growing up, I was only exposed to the Batman series on TV with Adam West. That was a very cartoonish and campy version of the story, but it did have an incredible stable of great guest actors doing the villains. So I had to come up to speed in the whole Dark Knight legacy. I had a long learning curve. I'm drawn to the character's incredible sense of decency and his conflicting dual personality. I think we all have aspects of ourselves that we keep from the world, hidden dramas. Question: if you can talk about it, what future projects do you have lined up? Kevin: I can't talk about anything in development at this time. Question: on Twitter you've mentioned that you've been to Ireland before. Do you have any Irish roots? Kevin: all 4 grandparents are from Ireland, counties Galway, Mayo, Antrim, Belfast. Many visits as a child, learned to ride in Malahide, dangled over the edge of the castle to kiss the Blarney Stone, attended classes for a summer at the English Language Institute at UCD. I'm actually a dual citizen with Ireland. So that was my first interview with Mr. Conroy. This was conducted via written correspondence before his in-person visit at Dublin Comic Con. I actually went out to Dublin Airport to meet him as he flew in. And it was actually just as well I did, because initially he was like, no one needs to come visit me, it's okay, I'll make my way to the show. But he accidentally forgot his phone. So luckily I was there to meet and greet him, and I could actually give him the number to contact the show organisers as well, should he need to reach out to them. It's also very interesting, I only realised this much later, but his reference to Dreamscape isn't actually a title for any of the Batman animated series episodes, but it does sound like one. It's almost like a Mandela effect. So that was probably poor journalism on my part for not going back and double checking. But what's really interesting is about the title of Dreamscape. There was an undeveloped episode of Batman the Animated Series which was going to feature Dream from the Sandman series. And I often wonder, was that perhaps him thinking of an undeveloped episode? Most likely he was perhaps misremembering something that he did produce throughout his extensive career in both animation and games portraying the character. But it was really an inspiring interview, even though it was only just a brief Q&A. His whole backstory really, really engaging. That, inner turmoil he felt in his youth and that kind of shyness, which I'm sure many of his fans associated with. And that's probably why he was able to speak so kindly to his fans, and everyone just reports back having a wonderful, wonderful interaction with Mr. Conroy whenever they met him at a convention, at a Q&A, whatever that may have been. During his evening wit experience at Dublin, which is the last time he visited, he shared with the audience some astounding moments. First of all, he sang Oskelga in the Irish language. He had a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful singing voice, and he did love to sing. Of course, many of his fans know his portrayal of Batman singing Am I Blue from Justice League Unlimited. But he seemed to be a real entertainer, great passion for the stage, and he recalled memories with his fans of, receiving flowers in his dressing room when he opened a play on Broadway, for his mother to be there to see him finally find success on the stage. He also shared how he had a very complicated relationship with his father, and how the emotional turmoil of that informed his performance in Mask of the Phantasm. That moment, that scene when he's pleading at the graveside of his parents, as young Bruce Wayne is, pleading with his parents to let him release himself from his vow. Mr. Conroy was drawn upon a dark memory with his own father at that moment, and that's why if you ever go back and watch that scene, you can hear it so layered with emotion. He also was roommates with Robin Williams, which he shared an entertaining story of how he would thought that Mr. Williams had a party going on in his dorm bedroom, but it was actually him rehearsing all his different characters, and that was just really entertaining to hear as well. They were both students of Juilliard as well. So now I would like to pass over to an extract of a recording with Miss Andrea Romano. This was taken from the introduction to Mask of the Phantasm, which was screened in Irish cinemas back in March of 2024, coincidentally coinciding with Andrea Romano's masterclass with us here at TASQ Art. Now, please forgive the audio quality. This wasn't a professionally recorded segment, but in it, Miss Romano refers to how she cast Mr. Conroy and just gives a very fun memory of the sound effects and what the instruction she would give to Mr. Conroy, particularly for Mask of the Phantasm. So I hope you enjoyed this extract.
When I first cast Kevin Conroy, Kevin did not have any voiceover experience, maybe some commercial voiceover, but no animation work. And when he would come in to record, I would ask him to give a level, which means speaking at the level that you're going to be doing the performance so the engineer can mic you properly. And he was kind of nervous about doing some of the fight stuff. He didn't quite understand the impacts and the sound that a person would make when they threw a batarang, and how they would make a sound if they were knocked out, if they were rendered unconscious. And so I would work him through the giving the level. Okay, do this line of dialogue, do this line of dialogue, throw a batarang, take a kick. Some of you guys may be familiar with these sounds I'm making. They were in a class with me today. And so as Kevin was getting more and more comfortable about doing these things, I would say, okay, and now I need the sound of being hit and fainting. So losing consciousness. And then I would hit the talk back, got really close to the microphone and said, now say my name. And he says, see if you don't see that represented in this film somewhere.
And now, following Andrea Romano's memories of Kevin Conroy and casting him and directing him during Mask of the Phantasm, we now go over to an extract from an earlier interview I did at Dublin Comic Con with Miss Susan Eisenberg from the March 2023 edition.
Thank you so much for saying all of that, for the condolences, for all of that. It's very sweet. Thank you. Yeah, I think we got exceedingly lucky with our group. You know, we see each other. We all got together after Kevin passed and toasted him, and it was, you know, so sweet. And I think that's Andrea putting all of us together in a room. And you know, when you talked about the legacy of the show, and I think that's the writers, you know, and I'd love to take credit for it, but I think that the writers were fans of the genre themselves. They appreciated the genre and they respect the genre. And so they, like you say, there was never a condescension with the fans. It was always respect. And I think the fans, that's why they're still there. That's why they're still, you know, watching the show. And when I meet people at cons, it's a father-daughter, it's a mom and a son, and I'm meeting generations because, like you said, for some of the fan base, their exposure, their introduction to these DC characters was through Justice League and Unlimited. So, you know, that's a beautiful thing to carry through, you know, to carry with us all. You know, we've all carried that with us, that we were part of somebody's childhood. You know, that's how lucky we are.
And now, to close out this episode, I'm going to leave you all with a message sent to me, arranged by friends from Mr. Conroy himself. This is recorded. It was actually a birthday message. I think I was just turning 30 at the time. It was during the pandemic. But really, in his own words, you will hear why Mr. Conroy will remain one of the most enduring and definitive interpretations and depictions and portrayals of the Batman character, and you know, so beloved by fans from around the world. So I hope you enjoy listening to these few words from Mr. Conroy himself.
I want you to remember Clark. In all the years to come, in all your private moments, I want you to remember my hand at your throat. I want you to remember the one man who beat you.
Okay, now this is Kevin. That was a dramatic reading of Batman as he's strangling Superman to death. I have been doing this for 30 years, since a year before you were born. Isn't that wild? It goes so fast, it doesn't feel like it. But the incredible thing that I never anticipated is this dialogue I get to have with the audience. And this has actually turned out to be the most enjoyable aspect, really, of doing the job. I get such a kick out of the, like going to Comic Cons and meeting the audience and the dialogue I get to have, because there's a really unique connection that people have to Batman. There's an intimacy there. It's like a personal connection. It doesn't exist for any of the other superheroes. And my feeling is that's true because of all the superheroes, he's the only one who's not a superhero. There's nothing supernatural about him. He can't fly, he can't see through walls, he can't bend metal. He's a man. He's a human being. He's more like a detective. Some people call him the great detective. But he's human. He's like you and me. In fact, he's a very flawed human. And he knows he's flawed. He's been damaged by life. We're all flawed. And we all get damaged by life. No one gets out of here without getting beat up a little bit. So it makes him that much more relatable. Because in a way, he's so much like us. What distinguishes him is that no matter what life throws at him, no matter what crisis or difficulty or failure, he doesn't let it defeat him. He doesn't let it make him bitter. He takes the pain that life throws at him and he turns it around and he gives it back to the world as love. Because his whole mission is to leave the world better than he found it. He knows he'll never wipe out all the crime in the world. That would be impossible. But he can leave the world better. And it's the nobility of that mission that we love so much about him. We also love his tenacity. He never gives up. No matter what life throws at him, he keeps coming back for more. And those are qualities we can all aspire to. You don't have to have superpowers to want to give to your family, your friends, your community, to leave the world a better place. All you have to do is care enough to try. All you have to do is care enough to want to. And these days, with all the craziness going on, everybody's under so much stress. The coronavirus, the lockdown, the political nonsense, we need each other more than ever. Because we're all we have. Because everybody gets beat up by life. Everybody makes mistakes. Everyone stumbles. Man, have I stumbled. And you can't let that stumble define you. I did that when I was younger, and it was a bad move. You can't let those stumbles define you. You're defined by how you get back up, how you recover, and give to life. And remember, it's not who you are underneath. It's what you do that defines you. Take care.
Kevin Conroy, 30th November 1955, 10th November 2022. Our thoughts with his family and friends. My thanks to everyone for listening to this episode, and also to Andrea Romano and Susan Eisenberg for their contributions to previous interviews used in today's special edition. If you would like to learn more of Mr. Conroy's story in his own words, please seek out the short story Finding Batman, which Mr. Conroy wrote, and it was illustrated in sequential art form by Jay Bone. It was a contribution to the DC Pride 2022 anthology, for which Mr. Conroy was posthumously awarded the Eisner Award, the highest award within the comic book field. Until next time, this has been a copyright production Macaulay Consultancy 2025.